All right. So for our last 4 questions, I would encourage you to try these on your own. I'm going to write the answers here so you can then pause the video and give them a shot and then come back. So for C, you should end up with 8 centimeters. And for G, 23 centimeters. E, you'll get 15 centimeters. And F, you should end up with 6 centimeters. So go ahead and give these a shot. Pause this video. And let's do them together now. Okay, so C, we want the length of one side of a right triangle if the other side is 15 centimeters and the hypotenuse is 17 centimeters. So here's our triangle. And it's a right triangle. And we have one side is 15 centimeters. And that's important actually that it's a right triangle. Pythagorean theorem only works for right triangles. So we have one side is 15. We're trying to find an unknown side, so I'm going to call that A. And our hypotenuse is 17 centimeters. So we know A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We're trying to solve for A, so I'm going to subtract B squared from both sides of this equation so that I have A kind of on its own on one side. So now I've got A squared equals C squared minus B squared. Okay, so A squared equals C is our hypotenuse. That's our 17. And B is going to be this leg of the triangle here, which is 15. So we're looking for 17 squared minus 15 squared. So 17 squared gives us what? 289. Oh, this should be B squared equals 289 minus 15 squared is 225. Okay, and so what does that give us? 289 minus 225, I get 64. So now we know that whatever the side length B is, that value squared gives us 64. So let's take the square root of both sides. And so again, why I'm doing that is because I know what B squared is. I want to know what plane B is on its own. And I know that the square root sign will undo the square. So you can kind of think of it as canceling. We're canceling out the square with this square root so that we get just our plane B. And so B here would be the square root of 64, which is 8. And we're dealing in centimeters. So this would be 8 centimeters. Okay, next one. We've got one side of a triangle is 7 and the hypotenuse is 24. Okay, so one of the legs, I'll call it A, is 7 centimeters. And the hypotenuse C is 24 centimeters. And we're looking for the other leg, so I'm going to call that B. So I know A squared plus B squared equals C squared. This time I'm solving for B, so I'm going to isolate the B squared on one side by subtracting A squared from both sides. So I get B squared equals C squared minus A squared. Again, you can just put the rearranged formulas on your formula sheet, but this is great practice for algebra later on. Okay, so B squared is, okay, we said C squared was 24, so 24 squared minus our A squared was 7 squared. And so 24 squared gives me what? 576. And 7 squared gives me 49. So when I do that subtraction, I get 527. So now I know what B squared is. So I want to know what B is. So I'm going to square root both sides. And now I'll have B equals the square root of 527 which gives me, so this one, actually, this is a decimal. Let me just double check I've done that right. 576 minus 49, 527, yep. Okay, so this gives me 22.956 and so on. And so actually, well, so we end up rounding up then to 23. It said to the nearest tenth, so really I should have written 23.0 here. So this is 23.0 centimeters because we were told to round to the nearest tenth. Okay, next one. We want to find the hypotenuse. We've got sides that measure 9 and 12. Okay, so let's call our one leg A is 9 centimeters. And our other leg B is 12 centimeters. And this time we're looking for C. So we know A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So our A is 9 and our B is 12. And together that will equal C squared. So we get 81 plus 144 equals C squared. And what does that give us? 225. And now I want to know what just C is, so I'm going to square root both sides. So I'm looking for the square root of 225, and that gives me 15. And we're dealing in centimeters. Okay, last one. We want to find the missing length for a right triangle. We have one leg measuring 8 centimeters and a hypotenuse measuring almost the same length, measuring 10 centimeters. Okay, so our hypotenuse C is 10 centimeters. And then our longest leg over here, I'll call that A, is 8 centimeters. Oops. Okay, so we're looking for the other leg, so we'll call that B. So we know A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We're solving for B, so I'm going to subtract A squared from both sides. And that gives me B squared is C squared minus A squared. C is 10. And A is 8. It's a bit messy. I'm just going to write that again. There we go. Okay, so B squared then is 100. 10 squared is 100 minus 8 squared is 64. And so what does that give us? 36. So we get 36 here. Last step, don't forget, we want to square root both sides because we want to know what plane B equals. So B is 6 and we're dealing in centimeters.